Every morning, the old woman came into the small cafe at exactly 8 a.m. Her name was Martha. Her hair was silver and always tied in a neat bun. She wore a light blue coat and carried a small black handbag. The cafe staff had seen her for years. No one knew much about her, but everyone noticed one strange thing. She always sat at the same table by the window, near the corner end. She always ordered tea for two, one cup in front of her, one across the table. But the chair across from her was always empty. Rain or sunshine, cold or warm, Martha never missed a day. She would sit there, take small sips from her tea, and stare at the empty chair. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she looked sad. Sometimes she just looked out the window in silence. The waiter, Sam, a kind man in his 30s, always served her. He wanted to ask her why she ordered two teas, but he never found the courage. There was something about Martha's quiet eyes that stopped him. They held stories deep and untold. One morning, as Martha came in and sat down like always, Sam finally asked, "Would you like just one tea today, or two?" Martha looked up slowly, her eyes calm but serious. "Two, please," she said softly. Sam nodded and said nothing more. That day, as Sam brought the tray with two cups, he looked at the chair and then back at Martha. "May I ask something?" he said carefully. Martha stirred her tea and looked at him. "Go ahead. Who is the other tea for?" he asked gently. Martha smiled, but her eyes were sad. "For someone who used to sit here with me." Sam waited, hoping for more, but Martha didn't say anything else. She picked up her cup and stared out the window again. The cafe owner, Ms. Claire, had seen Martha for nearly 10 years. She told Sam, "She's been doing this since before you started working here. Always tea for two. Always that chair." Sam asked, "Do you know who she's waiting for?" Claire shook her head. "No, but once, a long time ago, she dropped a picture while paying the bill. I saw a young woman in it, maybe in her 20s. Martha picked it up quickly and said nothing. The mystery stayed with Sam all day. That night, he told his wife about Martha. "She sits there like she's waiting for someone who will never come." His wife said, "Maybe she's remembering. Some people don't come back, but their memories stay." The next morning, Martha came again. The chair was empty again, and Sam placed two cups again, but something was different. A boy, about 10 years old, was sitting at the table next to hers with his mother. He kept looking at Martha. Finally, he walked up to her and asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" His mother rushed over embarrassed. "I'm so sorry. He's very curious." But Martha smiled at the boy and said, "It's okay." The boy waited for an answer. Martha said gently, "Yes, I suppose I am." The boy looked at the empty chair. "Will they come?" Martha looked at the chair for a long time. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in some way, they are already here." The boy didn't understand, but he nodded and smiled. "Okay, I hope they come soon." As the boy left, Martha's eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped them away and looked out the window. After she left that day, Sam walked over to the table to clean it. Something small was under the napkin. It was an old, worn photo. He picked it up gently. In the photo was Martha, many years younger, sitting beside a young woman with curly hair. They were in the same cafe, smiling, teacups in their hands. Sam quickly gave the photo to Miss Claire. "This must be the woman," he whispered. Claire stared at it. "She looks like Martha, and that must be the same table." Sam said, "It wasn't her son. It wasn't a soldier. It was a young woman." Claire nodded. "Maybe a daughter, or something else." That night, Sam placed the photo in an envelope with the words, "You dropped this." He left it under the sugar jar on Martha's table. The next morning, Martha came like always. She saw the envelope. She opened it slowly, and when she saw the photo, her hand trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. Again, she looked around. Sam was watching from the counter. She gave him a soft, grateful smile, then placed the photo gently on the table next to the second teacup. That day, Martha didn't look out the window as much. She looked at the photo. She spoke softly to it, as if the woman in the photo was sitting across from her. And for the first time, she smiled fully. Outside, it started to rain. Inside, something beautiful had begun. The empty chair was still empty, but it didn't feel that way anymore. That night, Martha sat by her window with the photo in her lap. She touched the face of the young woman in the picture. Her name was Anna. Anna had been more than just someone special to Martha. She had been her world. Years ago, before time and pain had built distance, they would come to the cafe together, laughing, sharing stories, and always ordering tea for two. The little cafe had been their secret place, their safe space, where no one judged and no one questioned. But one day, everything had changed. Anna had left. She said she needed to find herself. She promised to write, to visit, to return, but she never did. Martha never knew what happened. The years passed, but the empty chair never stopped waiting. Martha kept coming, just in case. At first she believed Anna might walk in one day, smile and say, "Sorry I'm late." But as the seasons changed, that hope faded. Still, Martha came every day, because the memory of Anna was strongest there, in that cafe, across from that chair. Now, after all these years, someone new. Sam had returned the photo with care. He didn't ask questions, he just gave her space. That act of kindness opened a door in Martha's heart she thought was locked forever. The next day, Sam greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Martha. Your usual." She nodded. "Yes," to tease. As Sam walked away, she added softly, "And thank you for the photo." He paused and gave her a gentle nod. It seemed important. She sat down and placed the photo between the cups. That day, she didn't look out the window. She looked at the photo. And then, something new happened. A flower was lying on the edge of the table, a small yellow daisy. Martha looked around, confused. Had Sam left it? Had someone else? There was no note. No one looked her way. But the flower was real, simple, and bright. She picked it up and smiled. The next morning, another flower waited at the same spot. This time, it was a small pink rose. Martha was now very curious. Who was doing this, and why? She asked Sam, but he shook his head. Not me. Maybe someone wants to make your day a little better. Well, she said, it's working. She laughed lightly, surprising even herself. Each day after that, a new flower appeared. A sunflower, a tulip, a violet, always placed carefully beside the second teacup. The cafe regulars started noticing. A few whispered about it. Some smiled kindly at Martha, but no one claimed the flowers. Martha began writing little notes in return. Thank you for the daisy. It reminded me of childhood. The tulip was my favorite so far. She left them beside the flower, but the person never responded. Then, on the 7th day, instead of a flower, there was a folded piece of paper. Martha picked it up, heart beating fast. It said, I don't know your story, but I can tell. That chair meant something. I just wanted you to feel seen. A friend. Martha pressed the note to her heart. Tears filled her eyes. Someone had noticed, not just her habits, but her pain, her love, her loss. That night, she sat again by the window, reading the note over and over. She wrote her own reply. Thank you, friend. That chair held memories of someone I once loved deeply. Your kindness feels like a soft breeze on an old wound. The next morning, she left the note where the flower had always been. She waited, but no one approached her, no one picked it up. Just as she was about to leave, a man in a green coat walked by the table, paused, and glanced at the chair. He smiled gently at Martha, nodded, and walked out. She wasn't sure, but her heart told her it was him, the stranger, the flower giver, the note leaver. Over the next few days, more notes were exchanged. Short, simple, thoughtful. She must have been someone special. She was. Tell me about her, if you ever feel ready. One day, Martha wrote a longer letter. She described Anna, her laughter, the way she used to tilt her head when she was thinking, how she loved lemon cake and always wore purple scarves. She wrote how they used to sit in that booth and talk for hours, how Anna had left and never come back, and how every cup of tea since then felt both sweet and sad. The next day there was a letter waiting for her in return. The stranger said he had once lost someone to us, his sister. Her name was Sophie. She had died in an accident, and for years, he avoided places that reminded him of her. But one day, he walked past the cafe and saw Martha sitting alone. The way you looked at that chair, he wrote, made me stop and look at mine. He had been leaving flowers not just for her, but also for himself, a way of healing, a way of saying goodbye. That day Martha didn't drink her tea, she just sat, the letter in her hands, her eyes soft with emotion. When Sam came to check on her, she whispered, he lost someone too. Do you know who he is? Sam asked. Not really, Martha said, but I think I'm starting to. The following morning, for the first time in years, Martha came wearing a purple scarf. She sat down and looked at the chair not with longing, but with something gentler, peace. The flower was already there, a white lily, her favorite. She smiled. Across the cafe, the man in the green coat sat near the door. He didn't come over, he just raised his cup slightly toward her. She did the same. It was not a conversation, it was something deeper. Martha continued meeting James almost every day at the cafe. The rhythm of their visits felt peaceful, almost like something long lost had returned to her life. They no longer needed notes or flowers to say how they felt. Their presence, their shared silences, and simple conversations said enough. The empty chair across from her was no longer a painful reminder of who was gone. It was a space where kindness had grown. One morning, Martha arrived early and sat alone for a while, sipping her tea slowly. James was running late, and she didn't mind. The window beside her showed soft clouds drifting in a pale blue sky, and she smiled quietly to herself. She was remembering Anna, but not with tears this time. Instead, she remembered her laugh, the way she used to steal the last piece of cake, and how she hummed when she was nervous. These memories, once heavy, now felt like sunlight, warm, gentle, and full of life. When James finally arrived, slightly out of breath and holding 2 small coffee cakes in a brown paper bag, he said, Sorry, got stuck behind a school bus. Martha laughed. At least you brought cake. That makes up for anything. They sat together and ate, and for a while, the cafe felt like its own little world. Sam came by and topped up their tea, smiling at the familiar pair. You two are the heart of this place now, he said, half joking. Martha blushed slightly. We're just the quiet ones who sit and remember. No, Sam replied kindly. You're the ones who made this booth mean something again. Later that day, James pulled something from his coat pocket. A small, folded note. I was cleaning out a drawer at home and found this. I wrote it after Sophie's funeral but never showed anyone. He handed it to Martha. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, emotional. The words were raw and real. It said, I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye better. I'm sorry I thought I had more time. I miss your voice, your jokes, your big dreams. You were always light, and I was. Always shadows. I didn't know how to carry your laughter after you were gone, but I think I'm learning now. Slowly. Martha held the note gently. You were carrying it all along, James. You just didn't see it yet. They sat in quiet, understanding, letting the moment breathe. James then asked softly, Did you ever wish you could go back and do something differently? Martha didn't answer right away. She looked down at her teacup, watching the steam rise. Yes. I wish I'd told Anna. I forgave her sooner. She left suddenly. I was angry. I told her to never come back unless she was ready to change. But maybe she was already hurting and just needed me to listen. She never came back. And I never got to say I was sorry too. James nodded slowly. Maybe we say those things now. In how we treat others. In how we remember them kindly. Maybe that's our second chance. The next day, Martha and James brought a small notebook and placed it on the table. On the cover, they wrote in simple handwriting, for those who carry memories. Inside, they left a message. If you've lost someone and want to leave a note, a memory, or even just a name, you can write it here. Sometimes it helps to share. At first, the book stayed empty. But one morning, a young man wrote on the first page, Dad, I'm still mad, but I miss you. I don't know how to stop missing you. Martha read it with a heavy heart and left. A reply below it, he hears you. And it's okay to still feel both. Over the next week, more people wrote in the book. A woman shared a poem for her late husband. A teenager scribbled a drawing of their dog who had passed away. An older man left a single line. I should have said I loved you more. James and Martha read every entry and left gentle replies. In the margins, it became something sacred, quiet, and deeply personal. The book stayed at the table every day, a soft place for broken hearts. Sam even created a small wooden sign for the booth, a seat for memory and comfort. All are welcome. One afternoon, a journalist visited the cafe. She had heard whispers about the booth with the notebook and wanted to write a short piece about it. Martha and James were hesitant, not wanting the moment to feel too public or exposed. But after thinking about it, they agreed. If it helps more people feel less alone, then it's worth it, Martha said. The article went online the next week. It was simple, emotional, and included a photo of the notebook with a caption that read, Even in loss, we can sit together. The story touched thousands. Letters arrived at the cafe. Strangers sent flowers with notes like for anyone who needs it or in memory of someone I miss. The cafe owner created a small shelf beside booth 6 to display some of the letters. Customers from out of town began visiting, just to sit at the table, write in the book, or leave behind a photo or flower. The quiet booth had become a haven. Despite the attention, Martha and James kept their visits the same, simple, peaceful. One afternoon, James brought a photo of Sophie her in a silly hat holding a birthday cake. I thought maybe she deserved a spot here too, he said. Martha nodded and placed it beside a small framed picture of Anna that Sam had found and set on the shelf. 2 faces, side by side, 2 lives remembered, 2 hearts healed. Slowly. That evening, just before closing, a small child came to the booth. She pointed at the book and asked Martha, Can I draw a heart for my grandma? Of course, dear, Martha said. The little girl took a crayon and drew a big red heart on the last page, then smiled. She's in the sky, but I think she'll see it. James looked at Martha, his eyes soft. We started with grief, he whispered. But look what it's grown into. Martha nodded. Grief, then hope, then love again. And as they sat quietly, hands wrapped around their cups of tea, the booth held not silence, but peace. And it was beautiful. Every day the booth by the window welcomed new stories. Martha and James kept coming, always with warm tea, soft smiles, and open hearts. The little notebook of memories was no longer just a journal. It had become something much more. It held sorrow, yes, but also hope. People came from far away just to sit for a few minutes, write a few lines, or read what others had written. Some stayed for hours, others just passed through, but all of them left something behind, even if it was only a quiet breath in the space between words. Martha had never imagined her quiet routine would turn into something this meaningful. For years she had sat in silence, lost in her own memories. But now she was surrounded by voices, some loud, some quiet, some broken, and some healing. James was always nearby, sometimes with a flower, sometimes with a story about Sophie. They had become a part of each other's lives in a way neither of them had expected. It wasn't about romance or filling empty spaces. It was about understanding, about being seen. One morning, James arrived holding a wooden box. He placed it gently on the table. I thought we could use something to hold the letters people leave. Some of them don't fit in the notebook anymore. Martha opened the box and smiled. Inside were small folded papers, some tied with string, others decorated with drawings. Each one was a message of love, regret, or remembrance. "It's perfect," she said. "Thank you." Sam, who had been watching from the counter, came over. "You two are starting to need your own corner of the cafe," he joked. "Between the notebook, the shelf, and now this box, you might have to start charging admission." They laughed, but deep down they all knew this little corner had become something sacred. People left flowers, photos, and letters. Sam even set up a small sign with the words, "This table listens." It was simple, but it said everything. That afternoon, a woman in her 50s came in holding a small urn. She walked straight to the booth and looked at Martha and James. "May I sit for a while?" Martha nodded gently, sliding over to make space. The woman placed the urn carefully on the table. "My husband loved this cafe. We came here every Sunday. I thought maybe today I could have one more cup of tea with him." No one spoke. Martha simply reached out and touched the woman's hand. James ordered an extra tea. They sat together in silence, sipping their drinks, the urn resting quietly between them. Before she left, the woman wrote a note and tucked it into the box. "Thank you for letting me sit. I needed this." Later that evening, Martha and James walked through the nearby park. The trees were full of green, and the air was light. James looked at the sky. "It's strange how grief can feel like a wall for so long, and then one day, it becomes a bridge." Martha nodded. "I think people just need a place to cross. That bridge, a place where they're allowed to feel whatever they feel. That's what this cafe has become," James said. "You started it." Without even trying, Martha smiled but said nothing. She didn't need to. James knew what that silence meant. It meant thank you. It meant I understand. The next day brought something unexpected. A school group came into the cafe, guided by their teacher, a young woman with bright eyes. She approached Martha with a nervous smile. "I hope this is okay. I told the students about the notebook and what it means to people. They all wanted to come and write something." Martha's eyes widened, touched by the gesture. The children, ages 10 to 13, lined up and one by one sat at the booth, writing short messages, many about grandparents or pets or friends they had lost. Some wrote simple notes like, "I miss you, Grandpa," or "You were my best friend." Others drew pictures of rainbows and hearts. It was beautiful, pure, and heartbreaking in its honesty. After they left, James read a few of the entries and wiped his eyes. "They understand more than we think." Martha nodded. "Sometimes children are the bravest." James arrived at the cafe early, something he rarely did. He carried a small wrapped box under his arm, looking nervous but excited. Sam noticed and raised an eyebrow. "Special occasion?" he asked. James smiled. "Sort of. Just something I've been thinking about for a while." He took his usual seat at booth 6 and placed the box carefully on the table. The cafe was still quiet, with just a few early customers reading newspapers or working on laptops. The shelf beside the booth was now filled with dozens of letters, drawings, photos, and small mementos. The wooden box sat neatly beside it, and the latest notebook was already halfway filled. When Martha walked in, her face lit up at the sight of James. "You're early today," she said, taking her seat. "Couldn't sleep," he replied. "Too many thoughts." He pushed the box toward her. "I got something for you." "What, for us, really?" Martha looked surprised. "James, you didn't have to, I know." He interrupted, "But I wanted to." She carefully unwrapped the box and opened the lid. Inside was a small plaque made of smooth oak wood, engraved with elegant letters. It read, "Booth 6, a place for remembering, and for beginning again." Martha's hand trembled as she traced the words with her fingers. Her eyes filled with emotion. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I thought it could be placed above the shelf," James said softly, "so people know what this place is about." Sam, who had been nearby, quietly nodded. "I'll hang it myself. It belongs here." As the morning went on, more visitors came by the booth. Some were regulars, others new faces. A young couple sat for a few minutes and added a photo of their baby, who had lived only a few days. A quiet man in his 70s came every Friday, and left a single sentence each time, "Still thinking of you." Martha and James greeted each visitor with kindness, never pushing, always letting people come and go at their own pace. It had become more than just a cafe table. It was a space where grief met kindness, where silence spoke louder than words. Later that afternoon, as the cafe buzzed softly with quiet conversation and soft music, Martha opened a fresh notebook. She had an idea. "I want to start writing letters to Anna," she told James. "Not to explain or apologize, just to talk, like I used to." James nodded with understanding. "That's a beautiful idea." Martha began writing. "Dear Anna, today I laughed at something silly," James said. "You would have liked him. He understands without needing too many words." She continued writing for a few minutes, her expression peaceful. When she was done, she placed the letter on the shelf, beside Anna's photo. "She always loved letters," she said. James felt a lump in his throat. "I think Sophie would loved this place too." "She's already part of it," Martha said, looking at the photo of the smiling young woman beside Anna's. "They both are." That evening, just as they were about to leave, Sam approached with a curious expression. There's someone asking to meet you too. She said she's from the city museum. A woman in her 40s, with glasses and a gentle smile, walked over. I hope I'm not intruding. I heard about Booth 6 through the article and the letters. We're working on a project about places of emotional memory. I'd love to include this space. With your permission, of course. Martha and James exchanged glances. James spoke first. We're not doing this for attention. We're just helping people feel less alone. The woman nodded. Exactly. That's why it matters. We want people to know that healing can begin in the quietest places. Martha thought for a moment. If it helps more people find comfort, then yes. But only if it stays true to what this is. It's not just a story. It's real people, real pain, real love. The woman agreed, promising to keep everything respectful and honest. She took photos of the booth, the notebook, the shelf, and even asked if she could include Martha and James's story. They said yes, as long as it focused on the memories shared, not just their names. Over the next few days, letters poured in, not just from the city, but from all over. People who had read the museum post online wrote to say how much the story meant to them. One letter read, I lost my brother 2 years ago. I didn't know how to talk about it. Your booth gave me a place, even from far away. Another said, I visit a park bench every day, thinking of my wife, but now I think I might leave her a letter too. Martha and James read each one. Some made them cry. Others made them laugh. All of them reminded them that grief was a language. Everyone spoke but too often in silence. One day, Martha received an unexpected envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in careful print. It said, I was Anna's roommate for a short time, years ago. She talked about you constantly. She said if anything ever happened, she hoped you would keep loving the world the way you loved her. I hope this booth is part of that love. Martha held the letter to her chest. She never really left, she whispered as the weeks passed. The cafe became even more of a community space. People left candles, painted stones, or shared songs written in memory of loved ones. A man brought in a small bird figurine and said, she used to feed birds every morning. This reminds me of her. Everything was treated with care and respect. One afternoon, a man came and sat in the booth without saying a word. He stayed for over an hour, staring at the table. Then, he stood up, nodded at Martha and James, and left a folded paper. It read, Today was the first day I didn't cry. Thank you. Martha and James understood something quietly growing between them. It wasn't romantic, but it was love. A deep, understanding kind of love built from shared loss, shared healing, and shared kindness. They didn't talk about it often. They didn't need to. It was there in the way they looked at the shelf, in the way they smiled at strangers, in the way they no longer feared the silence. The chair that once stood empty had become a place where people sat to feel, to remember, and sometimes, to begin again. And it all started with a cup of tea, a quiet booth, and a woman who never stopped loving. Winter arrived quietly, wrapping the city in soft cold air and early evenings. The cafe windows fogged gently from the warmth inside, and tiny lights twinkled. Around the frame of booth 6, Martha arrived wrapped in her wool coat and a scarf Anna had once given her. James was already there, brushing snowflakes off his shoulders and holding 2 cups of hot tea. They started decorating early this year, he said, nodding at the lights. It's nice, Martha replied, sitting down. Feels like the season knows we needed something gentle. The booth had changed over time, and now held not just memories but life. New names filled the latest notebook. Some people returned, sharing new parts of their healing. Others never came back, leaving only a line or two behind. But their words stayed. Their presence remained. Martha placed a small framed photo of her and Anna at the table. James added a little snow globe Sophie had once loved. It was chipped, the glass slightly cloudy, but when shaken, it still sent tiny flakes swirling around a small tree inside. Sam came over with a warm smile. Busy week ahead. You two staying through the holidays? I think so, James said. It's where we feel closest to them. Sam nodded and walked off to tend to other customers. Martha looked around. The cafe had grown in ways she never imagined. There was now a small bookshelf in the corner with grief memoirs, poetry, and journals donated by patrons. A bulletin board held photos of those remembered in the booth. There were children's drawings, postcards from travelers, and letters written in a dozen languages. People had made this place their own. James sipped his tea and turned to Martha. I've been thinking about something, she raised an eyebrow. That always sounds serious. Not serious, he said, just hopeful. I want to write a book, not about us, exactly, but about this place. About the booth. About the stories. I think it might help others, especially those who don't have a booth to sit at. Martha was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. You should. I'll help you. Really? He asked. Really? She smiled. It's a way to keep all of this alive. In the days that followed, they started gathering pieces. Quotes from the notebooks, letters people had left behind, even a few short interviews. The cafe regulars supported the idea, eager to see the stories shared. They wrote down memories of their own. Some sent messages anonymously. Others brought old photographs and explained who the people were and why they were missed. It wasn't just a book. It was a collective voice of those who carried love in quiet places. One evening, just before closing, a young woman in her 20s came in. Her face looked tired, and her eyes were red. She sat at booth 6 and stared at the table. Martha and James were there, sipping tea and sorting notes. Martha leaned over and said gently, "Would you like some company?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My mother passed last week. I didn't know where else to go." Martha reached across and took her hand. "You came to the right place." The girl cried softly while James fetched her tea. She said her name was Leela. She had found the cafe through a blog post. She didn't know what she expected when she arrived, but somehow, it felt safe. "Everyone keeps telling me to be strong," she said, "but I just feel broken." "You're allowed to feel that way," James told her. "This table has seen every kind of grief. There's no right way to do it." Lila came back the next day, and the one after that. She started writing in the notebook, slowly, at first,